Today on The Divide, a special episode as we look back at unrest that took over our cities this time last year. The stories that caught our attention, from a hero security guard
and I snatched the weapon from him,
to the politicians who stayed silent.
I have not heard anything about that.
And the officers who found themselves right in the middle of the debate over race and policing.
They picked out all the black officers, all of the officers of color, and it was a how dare you do this job.
That and more as we attempt to bridge the divide. Hello, so great to have you here. Thank you for joining us for this special episode of The Divide as we look back at the unrest that unfolded 1 year ago following the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis. In Seattle, it began in earnest on May 30th of 2020. Peaceful protests gave way to widespread looting, vandalism, and violence in the city's core. The smoke from flaming police cars and the sting of tear gas filled the air. In the days and weeks that followed, more unrest as clashes between police and demonstrators intensified outside SPD's East Police Precinct, leading to the creation of an occupied protest, first known as Chaz, then known as CHOP. I'm sure all of you remember that quite well. Seattle, as a result, soon became a national spectacle as our leaders did very little to quell the violence. On June 14th, we used this show to call on those in power to speak up about what was going on. Sometimes as a leader, what you don't say speaks louder than what you do say. Like Governor Jay Inslee claiming to be completely unaware that Seattle conceded 6 city blocks to a group of protesters who rendered the city's East Precinct useless and named their new autonomous zone Chaz.
Well, that's news to me, so I'll have to reserve any comment about it. I have not heard anything about that from any credible source. Not that you're not credible, it's just like before I espouse an opinion, I should know of which I speak.
And we should certainly mention that it had been nearly 2 days by that point since this autonomous zone started. The story was all over local and national news. It was trending nationwide on Twitter. So either the governor really wasn't paying attention to a major situation unfolding in his state, or he didn't want to talk about it. I'm not really sure which option would be worse. But what he didn't say in that moment spoke much louder than what he did. Intimately aware, however, of the events in Seattle was City Councilwoman Teresa Mosqueda, who joined protesters on the front lines of a police barricade and said nothing as a protester yelled at cops to kill themselves.
We're out here fighting for the ability for people to breathe.
I need you to do me a favor.
That is
Take your guns, put them under your chins, and pull the trigger.
Again, what she didn't say in that moment spoke louder than what she did. She later told our Simone Del Rosario that she should have said something.
My commitment is to continue to make sure that they have the safety and health that they need, including suicide prevention. I condemn the language that was used and wish that I had said that on Saturday night.
And that's an important ability for leaders to admit when they made a mistake. But it would not be the only time this past week that Councilwoman Mosqueda's lack of words spoke loud and clear. You may have heard that my crew was harassed, targeted, and accosted up on Capitol Hill the night that protesters took over. After that happened, Councilwoman Mosqueda quickly came to our defense, along with many others on Twitter. She called it unacceptable, an outrageous display of intimidation and harassment. But just as soon as she offered those words, she deleted them, amid backlash from folks on the far left who apparently don't want her expressing sympathy for me because it's apparently controversial to say that news crews should not be assaulted while doing their jobs. The councilwoman later put out a different defense of us, this time by couching it by blaming people's political perceptions of me and their apparent fear of our security guards. She wrote, "No matter your politics, we must respect the work of reporters. I understand tensions are high, and I heard security presence can be triggering, but if I were in Brandi Kruse's position, I imagine it would have been panic-inducing and intimidating, especially during the time of COVID-19. As I told the councilwoman in response to that, our guards were posted up on a barricade eating Funyuns in the moments before the mob started. If that's triggering to people, then I suggest they take it up with Frito-Lay. And we wouldn't need security if year after year leaders in this city didn't look the other way and say nothing when protesters turn violent. I'll say it again. What you don't say speaks louder than what you do say. And just in case you're curious, Republicans, don't worry. You're not getting a free pass on this one today. The state Republican Party can't even offer a simple statement denouncing gubernatorial candidate Tim Eymon's obviously flawed and deeply insensitive remarks, saying the governor's current coronavirus mandates are akin to the officer who pressed his knee into George Floyd's neck, suffocating the life out of him. If you can't condemn that, well, again, that speaks louder than any words you might have offered. So for those who we look to speak up when it's called for, well, you should know that we can hear your silence. And the silence is deafening. But of course, leaders refused to change their ways. Not much of a surprise there. As unrest continued in the city, council members stayed silent, even with lives quite literally on the line. Fast forward to August of 2020, and it became clear that some leaders would not be able to live up to their responsibilities. This week brought more silence from elected leaders, more missed opportunities to show that they can speak up, especially about things that happen in the city they serve. Like when rioters attempted to burn Seattle police officers alive, trying to lock them in the East Precinct, then setting it on fire. The president of the Seattle Police Officers Guild called on city leaders to please say something.
I call on our elected officials to publicly condemn very strongly these criminal actions, these domestic terrorist actions against our community.
But I've got to be honest, this whole pattern we've gotten into of asking, even begging or shaming elected leaders to say something, to speak up, it's a little sad, isn't it? It's a little sad that we actually have to ask them to comment on something like this. That they can't look at that and say loud and clear that it cannot continue, that it doesn't serve any cause, that it does not make this country more just. But for some reason, for some leaders, it's just not that simple. The truth is that even when we do press elected leaders on these things, when we give them a chance to clearly and unequivocally speak up about assaults on police officers, for instance, they don't just punt. They run such a predictable trick play that you can see it coming from a mile away.
I think that what folks have been protesting is much more grave. People being pulled over, people dying at the hands of folks while they were getting arrested.
Where was the outrage when all these Black folks were being killed? Why was there no questioning of that?
Well, I think there was. What we're seeing for the last 2.5 months is a result of outrage. Now, granted, those responses I just showed you were about assaults on officers before the arsons this week, but the deflection is clear. The idea that you can't strongly condemn violence without adding an asterisk to it, because it's just easier to ignore your own problems by pointing out someone else's. Let me read you a few reactions to the story of those rioters trying to light a police precinct on fire with officers inside. These were all on Twitter. This user wrote, "Buildings have multiple exits." Oh. Let's see, another one here. "Maybe they should stop attempting to murder Black people." And there were a lot of responses like that. People saying, yeah, they're doing this maybe, but this is worse. And it's not saying that you can't comment on that other thing. It doesn't have to be mutually exclusive. Can you imagine if a right-wing group tried to light a building on fire in Seattle with people inside? If you think 1 second would go by without city leaders condemning it as an act of domestic terrorism, then you're fooling yourself. There is no explanation or excuse for their silence on this, none. And there is no longer a point to any of us, to me, to you, begging them to comment, to condemn. Because even if they do, does it really mean anything if it was pried out of them? The only way some of these council members will comment on that East Precinct arson is when more of the suspects are arrested and charged by the feds. Then they'll speak. Then they'll be outraged. Because then they can say that Donald Trump's Department of Justice is throwing peaceful protesters in federal prison. That plays to their political base. Let me tell you something. I know for a fact that Seattle City Council members would be pretty upset if President Donald Trump got a second term. But every day that goes by, their silence and the silence of politicians like them put Donald Trump closer to 4 more years. And they will have no one to blame but themselves. And of course, Donald Trump did not win 4 more years, but my other prediction did come true. When right-wing rioters stormed the U.S. Capitol in January, well, leaders here wasted no time. They spoke out without hesitation, as they should. If only they had found their moral compass a little bit sooner. Coming up after the break, as we continue our special episode of The Divide, a story that captured headlines as a Marine turned security guard sprang into action, potentially saving lives as chaos consumed the streets. And later, how 2 black officers found themselves front and center in the debate over race and policing. Stick around. Welcome back to a special episode of The Divide as we take you inside the chaos that unfolded a year ago this week on the streets of Seattle. As cameras fixated on burning police cars near Seattle's Westlake Park, they also captured a moment of heroics, and we were there to see it firsthand. As chaos consumed the streets of Seattle, as rioters lit fires and looted stores, our cameras rolled while these 2 Seattle police SUVs, left in the middle of the mayhem, were destroyed. In just moments after this video, we would realize how serious that destruction was about to become.
Listen.
I immediately assumed that there were firearms in those vehicles.
This is our security guard.
Move out of that area.
Okay?
Yes, please move out of that area. We just want to make sure you're safe.
Assigned to our Q13 FOX crew that day, making sure we could cover the events as safely as possible. A Marine veteran, trained to remain calm under pressure and trained to be decisive in the face of danger.
As an infantryman, that's what you need to do. You need to make a decision and absolutely run with it.
And that's exactly what he did. The moment a rioter pulled a police-issued AR-15 rifle out of one of those police SUVs.
First thing that ran through my mind is I gotta get my team to safety, so that's you guys. I put you guys around the corner back
So
here.
we actually went around here, around this plant,
Around the plant?
is my recollection.
No.
While we took cover, a bystander captured cell phone video of what happened next.
Clear the block! Clear the block!
The rioter, seen there with the rifle, opens fire. As the witness keeps his video rolling, the shooter starts to walk away, rifle in hand. But watch back, right there. You can spot our guard rushing around the corner and heading straight for the man with the gun.
He held the weapon down in a way because he was shocked and afraid. So I came up and I snatched the weapon from him. I told him to get out of here.
But his job, or rather his sense of duty, didn't end there. Remember, there was another police SUV. And yes, another gun.
That's when I looked over and I saw the second AR produced from a rifle bag out the back of a police SUV.
What happened next played out on live TV, the images now seen by millions. Another bystander captured this video.
Whoa! The thought was, I need to take that. I need to get control of that. That is a police firearm.
And within seconds, the threat is over.
I snatched him, I told him to get out of here. He was just stunned, flat out stunned.
Freelance photographer Zachariah Beam also caught the moment. The rioter surrendering the rifle, his hands in the air in disbelief as his friend tries to drag him away. Our guard checking the bag on the ground for more guns.
From there, I put my Glock in my pocket and unloaded the weapon, cleared the chamber.
And he did all of that with the first AR-15 disarmed and still slung over his shoulder.
What they did is they were thinking, yeah, I'm cool. This is cool. What can I do with this? I didn't have to fire a shot, and I'm really thankful for that. I don't want to take American life. I want unity, not division. So if I could do something, if I could take an avenue where I didn't have to take an American life, I wasn't going to. And through firearms experience and training and instructing, I knew they didn't know what they were doing.
After returning the rifles to police, our guard changed clothes to try to blend back in, and we went back to reporting. Unaware that his actions were captured on live TV, and that he was being hailed a hero, a title he doesn't want or think he deserves. But perhaps there's a more fitting title anyway, one he'll have for the rest of his life: Marine.
I've made a decision when I was a child that I wanted to be a Marine. I wanted to be a Marine infantryman. And then I've made that decision every day for years, countless thousands of times, that if a situation came up, I would do what I needed to.
Have you allowed yourself to think what might have happened had you not intervened in both of those instances?
No, and there's only one reason for that. I would not have let it happen. There was only one thing I could do. There's only one thing I was going to do. Like I said, I made that decision years ago, and every day since.
Yeah, look, in the moment down there, I was terrified. I mean, that was an absolutely terrifying situation. But when I watch it back, with a year between us, so proud of him and what he did and what he could have avoided. And look, his actions were not only celebrated by people watching all of this unfold live on their TV screens, but also by police and protesters alike who were glad he was able to take quick action without anyone getting hurt. All right, coming up after the break, we revisit a heartfelt conversation with two officers who found themselves very much at the center of a debate over race and policing. Stick around. Welcome back to this special episode of The Divide. As tensions boiled over between police and protesters this time last year, Black officers say they found themselves becoming targets for vitriol. I sat down with two of those officers who were joined by the president of the police union to talk about being at the center of the debate over race and policing. During those nightly clashes up at the East Precinct, what was that experience like for you as officers? How close were you to those protesters?
As close as we are to you, and sometimes closer. So, we were there for, 12, 15 hours a day. So it was not uncommon just to have, sometimes we'd have very pleasant conversations with some of the protesters. Other times it was just a scream fest. They would just yell and just degrading insults.
Like what?
For instance, their mantra was "quit your job." And then the other thing was, and I think I can speak for Roselle on this as well, they picked out all the Black officers, all of the officers of color, and it was a "how dare you do this job." And so at the first few days, you're listening to it and you recognize that it's a script, but then it becomes very personal. So then they start, using your name and, saying that they're going to kill your family and they're going to do, they're going to rape your wives, and it became very personal. And so I think I was good until someone, said, "How could you of all people do this job?" And it's like, okay, first of all, you can't challenge my Blackness in this uniform, because people before me in my own family died so that I could have the privilege to wear this uniform and to serve my community. So never ever question my motivation to be in this uniform, in this skin. And this one lady, she goes, "Why do you need all that gear with, they're just throwing a water bottle at you?" I said, "Well, if I freeze a water bottle or a soda can and I throw it at your face, you tell me whether or not you'd want to have some protective gear on." So I think that it was the misunderstanding of the people who were not actually engaged in physically trying to assault us, that they didn't understand why we had to protect ourselves the way that we did. And I don't know that necessarily that they appreciated it even after learning, that someone's throwing a tennis ball full of gunpowder at you. It's like, I have the same right to protect myself as you do to protect yourself. My family expects me to come home every night in the same condition that I left, just like your family expects that from you.
I think we were the easy target to pick out, and
But why would you be the easy target as a Black police officer?
Black police officer, what they believe is a predominantly white police department, so therefore you're the easy target. And like Monique said, the people's sentiment is, how dare you pick this profession? Why are you over there? You're on the wrong side. You're not with us. And just like she said, I just kept thinking back to the people who died for me to be able to have this job, hold this position. And like I tell the people that I'm trying to recruit, we have to get involved. We have to take our spots in these type of jobs so we can have our voice, you know, so we can help out, so we can see both sides and every side of everything going on. But if we want to stand on the outside and make all the excuses, how are we going to be part of the solution?
The only thing that bothers me is the hijacking of a very legitimate reason to protest and devolve it into what it's become. And we've lost focus on the real message, and now we're focused on whatever the chaos is that's happening in the city.
How have you been doing the last few weeks? Do you have family saying, I can't be a cop anymore?
I have a lot of family that's been calling and checking up on me, friends as well. And that's what I appreciate. And like I said, that's why I love the job. You know, everybody knows me, knows that I'm pretty good in situations, but I'm still grateful that they call me and reach out to me to see how I'm doing personally. And that means a lot because I want to be here. I want to help the community. That's why I became a police. And at this time, I just would hope that everybody could like take a step back of all the madness and chaos and let's sit down and have a conversation, because me personally, I feel we can't move forward unless we do it together. And so that's the thing that we need to understand. Let's sit down and have a conversation. There's going to be differences, and I understand that, but at this moment, I think it's about time. Let's sit down and let's start these conversations and see how I can help you and how you can help me, because we can do it together and we have to do it together. So I'm open with that. I'm comfortable where I'm at right now. I'm just ready to hear the next steps of what the public wants from me.
Mike, I imagine you worry about the officers a lot right now.
Yeah.
Is it the mental or is it the physical?
I think right now it's both, but more so when I interact with the people that comprise this union is the mental health side of things is what's strikingly is on topic. I see people that are having a tough time. And I think that's what I tried to say earlier, is that we're human beings. And it is a calling, but some of the things that we've been exposed to transcend some of the reasonableness that needs to come back in our society, and it has an impact on people. But then again, you know, it's part of the job. So it's, but it's definitely heightened right now, the worst I've ever seen it.
Yeah, tough conversation, tough to put yourself in their shoes. We do appreciate you joining us for this special episode of The Divide as we took a look back at what was an incredibly divisive moment in our city and our country, one that continues to impact policies around policing, and one that, quite frankly, tested our political leaders, some of whom performed better than others, let's just say. We do welcome your feedback. Please make sure to follow me on Facebook and Twitter. You can also email us, thedivide@q13fox.com. And don't forget, every Monday we post new episodes of The Divide podcast. So please make sure to download, subscribe, and give us a little rating. If you don't mind, if you want it to be a bad rating, that's fine too. I will see all of you next week on Q13 News This Morning.